evening, everyone, and sorry for the 10 minutes delay. Uh, Today let us, in the era of targeted therapy and immunotherapy, let us focus on the management of triple negative breast cancer, where hardly we have any targets for this particular disease. Uh, Next slide. In the era of COVID, nobody is picking anything other than COVID. Uh, let us also have a discussion at the end as to how we can handle the situation of COVID. But as far as breast cancer is concerned, it is one of the uh, commoner cancers which we have, and you can see the incidence which is there on the screen, and significant number of patients do die. But the good thing about breast cancer is that it's not affecting a vital organ to begin with. Supposing if you have a lung cancer or a liver cancer, they're vital organs where the survival is in few months to years only. Whereas breast cancer is concerned, if you pick up this disease quite early, you can operate them and you can cure a significant number of patients. So picking up breast cancer early really cures this particular set of disease. Next slide, please. Well, so this is the way the the site-specific cancer has been there in females. You can see that breast cancer is one of the most common. We had cervical cancer to be the most common at one point of time, but as because of hygiene, education, pap smear, screening, we are able to cure significant population with cervical cancer, and now breast cancer has become the top priority for us. And you can see the numbers very staggering. Staggering 27, nearly 30% of patients do have breast cancer, and that will make us understand how significant this particular disease is all about. Okay, next slide. So this is a interesting slide where you can see the blue line and the red line. Blue line is the incidence and red line is the translation to mortality. If you look into lower down leukemia, you can see that the blue and red are almost identical, because the number of patients having incidence, we are not able to cure significant patients. Whereas if you look into colorectum, the incidence is there, but the mortality is little less. The moment you come to breast, it's a long blue line that says that the incidence is so significant. We are having more frequent diagnosis, but we are able to cure significant patients. So the cure rate is what that matters as far as breast cancer is concerned. So we can cure significant number of patients because we're able to pick them at a earlier stage, and that's the idea of this blue and red line difference. Okay, next slide. So if you look into breast cancer biologically, we basically classify breast cancer depending on what is called as a genomic expression profiling. But as a surrogate to that, as far as treatment is concerned, we classify breast cancers into ER positive, HER2 positive, and triple negative. These are the three basic subgroups we have. The corresponding subgroups, as well as genomic expression profiling is concerned, is we have the luminal A and the luminal B, which are strongly hormone positive and HER2 negative, and then we have the HER2 positive group, and then we have the triple negative or the basal group. So triple negative breast cancer is where we have not identified a specific target for this particular disease. Chemotherapy is still the backbone for treatment in this particular disease. However, immunotherapy is coming up, and you can see out of breast cancers, nearly 15-20% of them have this triple negative variety as well. So the unique thing of these triple negative variety is that these are high grade tumors. They're fast multiplying. You do not detect them when the tumor is small. You detect them when the tumor is large in an advanced stage than in the early stage. If you look into a hormone positive disease, on that occasion, you would be detecting when the tumor is smaller in the earlier stage, whereas in the triple negative variety, you will be detecting it in an advanced stage. You have a larger, if you compare and contrast the triple negative versus the hormone positive variety, triple negative variety is where you are picking up at a much advanced stage, where we have large breast tumors, and we have extensive visceral metastasis. So if you look into hormone positive variety, there we have metastasis only confined to bones, whereas if you look into triple negative, there the mets is into the viscera. So visceral metastasis, large tumors, young age, premenopausal, high grade tumors. So all these are sort of hallmarks of triple negative variety when compared to the hormone positive variety. Okay, next slide. Well, this is what I was telling about the metastatic breast cancer is well. Uh, so if you look into the disease-free interval, supposing we have treated a localized breast cancer in a hormone-positive patient, we see the recurrence rate post 5 years. In the later part, after completing 5 years, we see the recurrence rates, especially in the bones. Whereas if you look into the triple negative variety here, we treat the local disease and we see the disease-free interval is around 2 years. So whatever recurrence we have is within 2 years. So we have a strict follow-up for this triple negative variety. We need to have a more suspicious follow-up, in fact, for the initial 2 years. A hormone positive usually relapses in the later part because they are sort of a low-grade tumors, whereas triple negative or high-grade where we see the recurrence within the first 2 years of follow-up. So what we can say is if a triple negative breast cancer is there localized and we have given adequate definitive therapy, if the disease relapse is not happening within 2 years, it is very likely that the patient is cured and the cure rate is even more than 90%. But as far as the hormone positive variety is concerned, in that occasion, we will see the recurrence beyond 5 years. Late recurrences is what we see. So, and one more thing is visceral disease is quite important. We have visceral metastasis, brain metastasis. This is quite common as far as the triple negative variety is concerned. Okay, next slide. So this is the finer molecular classification of triple negative. So we always think that all triple negative breast cancers are having basal variety. So all triple negatives are not basal in nature. Of so they are not synonymous. We have significant proportion of triple negatives which are non-basal also. So we have something called luminal androgen receptor positive patients. We have HER2 enriched patients, so the Claudine like patients, so all these also are present. So triple negative and basal are not synonymous. 70 to 75% of triple negative are of basal variant. Okay, next slide. Well, if you look in next slide. So this is all what we have as far as the armamentarium for a metastatic triple negative breast cancer is concerned. Chemotherapy forms the backbone for treatment of triple negative breast cancer. You can see the great molecules like taxanes, anthracyclines, antimetabolites, platinum, and antimicrotubule agents. So these are all drugs, the types of drugs which are available to treat triple negative breast cancer. We have to use these judicially in sequence. It is very rarely we use this in combination, only when we want rapid control of disease, but sequential use of these agents one by one whenever required to add sufficient PFS and finally to overall survival. So in along with this armamentarium which we also have some targeted drugs. For example, we are looking into androgen receptors, and now we have and now we have some govatican where sacituzumab govatican, where we have antibody drug conjugates where with the targeted therapy with the conjugate we attach, and we are trying to improve the efficacy. And now the big immunotherapy is coming in a big way, especially in the PD-L1 positive subgroup. So along with chemotherapy, we also are having some targeted therapy in triple negative breast cancer, which we are going to talk further. Okay, next slide. So this is about taxanes, docetaxel, paclitaxel, nab-paclitaxel. All have been tried as far as triple negative breast cancer is concerned, and this is one of the gold standard molecule where we see modest responses, faster. We have faster responses, higher response rates. We can combine them with platinum usually. Okay, next slide. So this is the trial. So whenever a patient of breast cancer comes to us, we need to use chemotherapy, and the majority of oncologists favor taxanes in the first line because of improved response rates, good tolerance, and all these things. So we have a comparison of docetaxel versus paclitaxel. Here, the dose used docetaxel is around 100 milligram per meter square, which is quite tough to use in a metastatic setting. We do use docetaxel at 100 milligram per meter square in an adjuvant setting, but it is difficult to handle because of neutropenia, diarrhea, and all these complications. But however, if you compare and contrast 100 milligram per meter square docetaxel versus paclitaxel at 175 milligram per meter square in advanced breast cancer patients, you can see that there is an improvement in the time to progression and also in overall survival. And of course, the adverse drug reactions are more in docetaxel. So handling 100 milligram per meter square as per this trial in clinical practice is not easy. So we usually use 75 milligram per meter square with GCSF prophylaxis. Okay, next slide. So this is about nab-paclitaxel, the novel formulation of paclitaxel, which we talk about as far as MBC is concerned. So this is one of the molecule which has got its approval mainly based on response rates. So if you look into the arms, we have docetaxel in one arm, and the other three arms are having 300, 100, and 150 milligram per meter square weekly, and 300 milligram per meter square 3 weekly. And in this particular trial, there were 4 arms, and the primary endpoint was overall response rate. Okay, next slide. So, so in when we had compared all these four, 150 milligram per meter square weekly was superior to docetaxel as far as response rates were concerned, and so nearly 49% response rates versus 35%. So whether this improved response rates is due to a higher dose used or is it due to nab-paclitaxel itself is difficult to say. So the unique thing about nab-paclitaxel is one is that we have lesser hypersensitivity reaction because it is cremorpher free. The other advantages we have is it shows an increased bioavailability within the cell because of the nano which is smaller size, and it is protein bound, and that's the reason why it shows an increased intracellular bioavailability, and therefore it shows improved response rates. And we also can administer a higher dose of nab-paclitaxel. So whether this particular improved response rates is due to the molecule itself or is it due to a higher dose is a matter of debate. But however, if you compare and contrast 100 per meter square 3 weekly docetaxel versus 150 per meter square weekly nab-paclitaxel, weekly nab-pacli has a improved overall response rate. Okay, next slide. So this is about in BRCA 1 and 2 mutant breast cancer. We all know that already the DNA repair mechanism is impaired in this set of population, and we want to use platinum where it causes mainly DNA damage, and platinum works better in BRCA mutant breast cancer because of inherent fragility of the DNA. So they had compared carboplatin versus docetaxel in this particular trial. Of course, there was a crossover. The primary endpoint was overall response rate, and the secondary endpoint was PFS, OS, and the crossover and the toxicity. So, and they did do a subgroup analysis based on the BRCA1 2 mutation, HRT, and all that. Okay, next slide. So if you look into the response rates, definitely, if you look into the BRCA mutant variety, definitely carboplatin did better when compared to docetaxel. So this simply says that if platinum shows more efficacy as far as response rates are concerned when compared to taxanes in a BRCA mutant variety. So whereas if you use whether you use platinum first or docetaxel later or docetaxel first or carboplatin later, the overall progression or all these won't differ. So the sequence doesn't matter, but platinum definitely in BRCA mutant population has a higher response rate. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So this is about the progression-free interval. We can see that single-agent docetaxel has improved PFS when compared to carboplatin. Okay, next slide. So whichever drug you use, the overall survival doesn't matter. Whereas if you look into the PFS in the BRCA mutated population, there carboplatin fares better than docetaxel. Okay, next slide. So we have understood that platinum is more efficacious in BRCA mutant population when compared to docetaxel. But however, whatever sequence we can use, and what happens when we combine a taxane with the platinum. So in this particular trial, we had around 190 odd patients. We had three arms of nab-paclitaxel carboplatin, nab-paclitaxel gemcitabine, and gemcitabine carboplatin. The primary endpoint was progression-free survival. Secondary endpoint was response rate, overall survival, and safety. Okay, next slide. So in this particular tenacity trial, we had a progression-free survival. You can see in the nab-pacli carboplatin arm, the progression-free survival was superior when compared to nab-pacli gemcitabine carboplatin. And even if you look into the overall survival, it was 16.4 months versus 12.1 months. So, however, it was not of significance overall survival, but you can see the progression-free survival was statistically significant. Okay, next slide. So we have seen this classical molecules of anthracyclines, taxane, platinum. So what we've understood is taxanes definitely nab-pacli has an improved response rates when we use at 150 milligram per meter square, and then carboplatin shows improved response rates with a triple negative variety and also in the BRCA mutant variety, and combining taxane plus platinum gives the best response rates. So those patients who have been heavily pre-treated, who already have been exposed to anthracycline and taxanes, so we had this embrace trial which made a lot of noise at that particular time. We had Haloven, that is eribulin mesylate, versus treatment of physician's choice in heavily pre-treated breast cancer patients, and the primary endpoint was overall survival. The secondary endpoint was PFS and response rates. Okay, next slide. So you can see in this particular trial there has been an improvement in overall survival, but not progression-free survival, and especially in the triple negative variety. Okay, next slide. So you can see in this particular forest plot, it is the triple negative variety where the benefit is the highest. So if we have a heavily pre-treated patient, especially prior anthracycline and taxane exposed in a triple negative variety, especially eribulin becomes the treatment of choice based on this embrace trial data of overall survival benefit. Okay, next slide. So, eribulin is not chemotherapy which requires prolonged infusion. It's a short infusion with reasonably good tolerance, and you can see that neutropenia and some amount of peripheral neuropathy have been, but it has been reasonably well tolerated. Okay, next. So then we had a head-to-head comparison of eribulin. So in the previous trial, it was eribulin versus treatment by physician's choice, and here it is eribulin versus capecitabine in those who are already been treated with anthracycline and taxane. And even in this, you can see the overall survival of around 15.9 versus 14.5 months. So then, so eribulin versus capecitabine, the 1 year OS was 64 versus 58% with a p-value of 0.04. So shows some modest improvement in overall survival with this particular drug. Okay, next slide. So again, you can see that it is a triple negative variety, which shows the best benefit as far as overall survival is concerned. So eribulin is known to impact overall survival, especially in this triple negative variety. Okay, next slide. So we were talking about targets. So this is what we have discussed on the hallmark chemotherapies of taxanes and then platinum, and then we have finished with eribulin, and we had comparison with capecitabine. Having finished the classical chemotherapy, and then we were speaking of the existence of some targeted mutations being present in BRCA has been one of the hallmarks of triple negative breast cancer. And you can see in the triple negative breast cancer, we can detect BRCA mutations in around 20% of patients. Okay, next slide. So when do we test for BRCA? So for if you look into ovarian cancer, all high-grade serous ovarian cancer patients need to be tested for BRCA. And if you come to breast cancer, any breast cancer less than 50 years, or any triple negative less than 60 years, if there is bilateral breast cancer, or if there is a history of ovarian cancer also, so then also we need to think of BRCA mutation being present. And then if you look into the family history, so if there is a first degree relative less than 50 years or more than one first or second degree relative diagnosed with breast cancer at any age, if we have a male breast cancer, or if from an Ashkenazi Jew heritage, in all these situations we need to think of BRCA mutation being present. So just picking up BRCA mutation not only has any impact on treatment of this particular patient, it also has a lot of impact on the family members, and also the patient has to follow up for ovarian cancer and other malignancies. So not only it has implication in treating this present cancer, it also has implication on the family members and also on detection of other malignancies in a particular patient. Okay, next slide. So this was the phase 3 Olympiad trial where in patients who are HER2 negative metastatic breast cancer, even hormone positive variety was also allowed who had germline BRCA mutation positive. In this set of patients, if you had less than 2 lines of chemotherapy or metastatic breast cancer, if hormone receptor positive not suitable for endocrine therapy, it had around 300 odd patients, and it was randomized to olaparib 300 milligram twice a day versus chemotherapy, which is the standard of care. And the primary endpoint was progression-free survival. The secondary endpoint was overall survival, response rate, safety, and quality of life. Okay, next slide. So if you look into the germline BRCA mutant population, you can see that the median PFS around 7 months versus 4.2 months, with a hazard ratio of 0.58 with a p-value of less than 0.01. So we have also seen in the ovarian cancer, and also now we are seeing in breast cancer, definitely in where the BRCA mutation is there, olaparib has significant impact. It causes what is called synthetic lethality, and because BRCA is a DNA repair gene, when it is defective, when olaparib PARP inhibitor causes damage, the DNA degradation is faster and the cells go apoptosis. So this sort of synthetic lethality has been reflected even in the clinical situation. If you use olaparib in patients of metastatic breast cancer who are HER2 negative, and this is the Olympiad trial, and this is the PFS difference, which is statistically significant. Okay, next slide. Well, the overall survival, if you can see, the p-value was 0.57. It all matters about the crossover matters, subsequent therapy matters in this particular setting. And the median overall survival was 19.3 was 19.6 months. And when there is crossover, definitely we cannot comment on overall survival. But looking into the PFS difference, definitely in BRCA mutant subgroup, olaparib does significantly better. Okay, next slide. So the PARP inhibitors have got their unique adverse effects of anemia being one of the biggest side effect, where the patients would require repeated blood transfusions. On that occasions, we may have to come down onto the dose by level 1, level 2 dose reduction. This has been the main side effect. We also see some diarrhea, GI side effects, vomiting, and some transaminitis, but the hallmark is mainly hematological toxicities with this particular drug. Okay, next slide. So this is talazoparib. We just spoke on the Olympiad trial in triple negative breast cancer did show a significant PFS difference in germline BRCA mutant population, and now we have this Abrazo study of talazoparib. This particular thing is a two-stage study where they basically had overall response rates as the primary endpoint, and we can see the CR is around the CR, PR, and stability. Limited number of patients, and what I would like to say is even this did show in the platinum sensitive setting. Even this did show reasonable response rates in par with olaparib. Okay, next slide. As you can see, and also the overall survival of around 12.7, which is in par with the olaparib trial. Okay, next slide. Again, this is the PFS and OS with 5.6 months and 14.7 months if there was no prior platinum. So basically, platinum and PARP inhibitors work in the same pathway of DNA damage pathway, using the synthetic lethality as the main mechanism of action. And it is expected that if we use PARP inhibitors before usage of platinum, their efficacy is better. Okay, next slide. So this is the MBRCA study of talazoparib versus physician's choice in germline BRCA mutant population. It included metastatic breast cancer with at least 2 lines of prior chemotherapy, including taxane or anthracycline in the adjuvant and metastatic setting. So talazoparib 1 milligram per kg daily versus physician's choice of K, peremelin, gem, and vinorelbine all could have been used. The primary endpoint was progression-free survival. The secondary endpoint was response rates and overall survival. Okay, next slide. Then, so this is about, so we finished the conventional chemotherapy, and then we finished the PARP inhibitors, and now let us go to the immunotherapy. Okay, next slide. So we have been searching for a target as far as triple negative breast cancer is concerned. So if you look into the tumor mutation burden, triple negative breast cancers have the highest TMB when compared to hormone receptor positive variety or a HER2 positive variety. So when there is a single driver mutation being present, in those situations we don't see a lot of tumor mutation burden. So whereas if we don't have a driver mutation, in that subgroup of patients we see a heavy tumor mutation burden. If there is high tumor mutation burden, that means they have a lot of new antigens being exposed. and they also have higher PDL1 expression, and they are amenable to this immune checkpoint inhibition. So TMB basically is highest in this triple negative variety, and they become amenable to immunotherapy. So we had the keynote studies with the pembrolizumab. Initially, it did show some efficacy when it was used in the triple negative arm. It had two cohorts. With one was with previously treated, another one was previously untreated patients. Okay, next slide. So you can see the response rates, the duration of response around 6.3 months, and in untreated it is 8.4 months, showing some activity in this particular subgroup of patients. Okay, next slide. Again, PDL1 did matter. The PFS also it did show some activity in the PDL1 positive and when compared to PDL1 negative. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. So this is the overall response rate data which we have as far as stable disease, and then disease progression also was quite significant. So what we can understand is pembrolizumab, especially in PDL1 positive population, did show some activity. Okay, next slide. The side effects are the classical side effects of any immunotherapy. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So today, one of the standard treatment options of any metastatic triple negative breast cancer is nab-paclitaxel plus atezolizumab, based on these IM power studies. Okay. So initially we had a phase 2 data, phase 1B study showing that it did have significant activity in this set of population. Okay. Next slide. With reasonable tolerance. Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. So from this phase 2 study, we understood that we need to have a phase 3 study in place, and then comes the phase 3 study. Okay. Next slide. Yeah. So this is the landmark study, the IM Passion 130 study, where we had metastatic breast cancer patients. These had triple negative breast cancer patients. Uh, 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 the clinical outcomes for patients with TNBC were poor. We didn't have we had chemotherapy backbone, and this was the trial that made atezolizumab plus nab-paclitaxel being the standard of care. So in this particular phase 3 study, it demonstrated benefit of adding PD-L1 inhibitor, which is atezolizumab to nab-paclitaxel in patients with untreated metastatic TNBC, and in those who are PD-L1 positive, the median PFS was 7.2 versus 5.5 months with a hazard ratio of 0.8, and in the PD-L1 positive subgroup, it was 7.5 versus 5 months, and there was no benefit observed in PD-L1 negative population, suggesting that PD-L1 positivity was a requisite before prescribing this particular drug. So based on these findings, atezolizumab plus nab-paclitaxel was granted accelerated FDA approval in guideline recommended for patients with PD-L1 positive metastatic breast cancer. So the OS is 80% mature from IM Passion 130. Okay, next slide. Well, in this IM Passion 130 study, we had metastatic triple negative breast cancer patients who were untreated. Uh, uh, this was a randomized controlled trial where it was randomized to atezolizumab 840 milligram plus nab-paclitaxel 100 milligram per meter square, day 1, day 8, day 15, and atezolizumab was used 2 weekly, and versus placebo plus nab-paclitaxel. And we can see the primary endpoints being progression-free survival and overall survival. So the design of the study was that it did look into progression-free survival in the intent to treat population and also in the PDL1 subgroup, and they would consider overall survival significant in the PDL1 population only if the OS was significant in the intent to treat population. So this was the design of the study. So till this study was published, immunotherapy was not the standard of care. But once this randomized trial was published, then we had immunotherapy as an important component of treatment in triple negative breast cancer. So the thing what we can note is the PDL1 examination which is done in this particular study is mainly by the SP142 per platform. So the difference of the SP142 versus the Ventana, versus the other platform is that this particular sort of analyzing PDL1 is mainly on the immune cells, whereas the other platforms for pembrolizumab, they basically use the PDL1 expression on the tumor cells. So they used more of PDL1 expression on the immune cells, and they called positive if it is more than 1% expression on the immune cells. So before we select the IM130 prescription, we need to see which platform we have used for examination of PDL1. Is it SP142 or is it DACO or Ventana? What platform are we using really matters before we prescribe this particular combination. Okay, next slide. So we had two interim analysis. Basically, one was at around 1 year, and another one was at 1.5 years. Okay, next slide. So you can see in the intent to treat population, the overall survival difference was not statistically significant with a p-value of 0.07. Of course, numerically it was significant of 21 months versus 18.7 months, but it did not meet its statistical significance. Okay, next slide. So in the PDL1 positive subgroup, even though the study was not powered to detect this particular difference, but if you look into the numerical difference in the PDL1 positive subgroup, it was 25 months versus 18 months. And having a 2-year overall survival with the triple negative breast cancer is quite promising. We hardly see a survival of around 1 year, 1.5 years. That is max what we have seen with conventional chemotherapy drugs we are using. But this was the first time where a triple negative breast cancer met a survival mark of 2 years. Even though the study was not powered to detect the statistical significance, the numerical difference was quite clear, and the hazard ratio was 0.71. So this particular graph is the one that made nab-paclitaxel plus atezolizumab as a standard of care in triple negative breast cancer if you have PDL1 at least more than 1%, and if you are doing it in the SP142 platform. Okay, next slide. Again, this is showing that PDL1 is the player over here. If you have PDL1 positivity, the overall survival, the progression-free survival is significantly better when compared to the PDL1 negative population. Okay, next slide. So these are the adverse events which we have. Definitely the class adverse events of any immunotherapy. There were no alarming adverse events with atezolizumab, was reasonably well tolerated, and there was no difference in the patient-related outcomes with a reasonably maintained health-related quality of life. Okay, next slide. So IM Passion 130 was the study that made immunotherapy to come in the armamentarium of triple negative breast cancer treatment. uh, because even though the intention to treat population did not meet statistical significance, there was a significant numerical difference, and also in the PDL1 positive subgroup, it met its landmark of 2-year overall survival, which we had not seen in triple negative breast cancer as of now. And it was reasonably well tolerated. And you can see this is the first therapy to cross the 2-year landmark OS benefit of 24 months OS of around 51% versus 37%. So this is the one that led to the approval of this particular molecule in the treatment of triple negative breast cancer. Next slide. So then we have other studies like nivolumab also showing some promise and some activity. Okay, next slide. So again, nivolumab also showed at a median follow-up of 10.8 months, did show some 22% overall response rates. Okay, next slide. So these are all the ongoing trials of PD-1, PDL1. Now all pembrolizumab, nivolumab. We have atezolizumab already being present, and then we are having now combination trials of atezolizumab plus PARP inhibitors. So all these permutations and combination trials have been happening, and we need to await the results of these trials. Okay, next slide. So this is one of the this is one of the area where we have a drug by name pembrolizumab being approved, what is called as tumor agnostic. Like we always have drugs that are approved based on the tumor site. Like I have, for example, I was speaking of atezolizumab plus nab-paclitaxel being approved for a tumor subsite, whereas MSI or a deficient MMR is where pembrolizumab got its tumor agnostic approval. Means wherever MSI is high, there pembrolizumab got its approval based on this trial. Okay, next slide. So you can see CRC, endometrial cancer, biliary cancer, pancreatic, breast cancer, any cancer if you look into, if you are using pembrolizumab uh, in MSI high population, it shows promise, and that's the reason where any tumor where we have exhausted all standard treatment options, we always look into MSI high, whether we can challenge some immunotherapy for this particular patient based on this promising data of whatever response rates or duration of response, whatever we have, even in biliary or whatever. So it has been a point where all medical oncologists think where we have exhausted all standard treatment modalities, we always look what is the MSI. If the MSI is high, I can place immunotherapy at some point with whatever data we have or whatever response we expect. Okay, next slide. So this is for all unresectable metastatic MSI high or deficient MMR solid tumors that have progressed on prior treatment with no satisfactory alternative options. Based on this trial, what we call as tumor agnostic. We don't look into where the tumor is arising from, whether it is MSI high or deficient MMR. We can go ahead with giving pembrolizumab, provided we have exhausted all standard treatment options. Okay, next slide. So this is post chemotherapy. Whenever we treat a particular, uh, there's a significant association identified between deficient MMR, the incidence of secondary tumors. Okay, next slide. So okay, next slide. So these are the ongoing clinical trials where we are trying to. So I was just trying saying you last time where triple negative is not always basal. We also have something like luminal androgen receptor positive subtype, where we can place androgen therapy, potent anti-androgen like enzalutamide. So these are ongoing. Okay, next slide. So this is how the clinical benefit rate of around 20% we have. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so the PFS is around 12.6 weeks, the median PFS. If the IHC is more than 10, it's 14.7 weeks. If the IHC is 0 to 1, so we are trying to quantify the amount of androgen expression. However, they are very premature to comment as of now, and it is not yet in the standard treatment. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. Next. Yeah. So, this is one. This is the new drugs where we have PIK3CA mutation positive. So we know PIK3CA mutation is one of the mutation that makes the tumor resistant to hormonal therapy, and now we have chemo plus PIK3CA inhibitors. Randomized trials are going on, and the results are awaited. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So this is the PFS data, whatever we have with whatever maturity in the P10 subgroup and P10 low subgroup. So these are ongoing trials. The data are not mature, not a standard of care. We can discuss once they are in standard practice and recommended by guidelines. Okay, next slide. So this is again the PFS difference in the PIK3CA mutant, AKT, and PTEN altered patients. In this subgroup of patients, well, even in hormone receptor positive subgroup, alpelisib has come in the big way, where in those patients who have been progressing on endocrine therapy, even if they're endocrine resistant, we need to test them for the PIK3CA mutation. And we have the selective PIK3CA inhibitors. So we initially had buprelisib and all, which are basically pan PIK3 mutation inhibitors, but the tolerability is a problem. So we need to have PIK3CA, the alpha variety where the specific inhibition definitely helps in reducing the toxicities. So these chemo combination using PIK3CA inhibitors in triple negative, if there is mutation positive, if there is a PIK3CA, AKT, or PTEN altered population, so definitely we can, whichever tumor where we have exhausted standard treatment options, we have to look into PIK3CA mutation also, so that we can place these PIK3CA mutation inhibitors at some point to get maximal benefit. Okay, next slide. So again, these are known. These uh, 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 molecules are known with their class side effects of GI side effects, rash, and they have some hyperglycemia. Sort of all these side effects are class side effects of PIK3CA inhibitors, and some amount of diarrhea, neutropenia. So very less is known about these drugs, so you will understand only when we start using them. Okay, next slide. So to conclude, we can say is triple negative breast cancer chemotherapy still forms the backbone, and we need to test for BRCA mutation, and we have to place PARP inhibitors based on the Olympiad trial. So we have taxanes, we have anthracyclines, we have eribulin, we have capecitabine. All these drugs are anyways there. Once we have exhausted chemotherapy options, we need to look into we need to look into PARP inhibitors in place, and then in the initial part, we also need to look into the PDL1 status by the ST142 platform. If they're positive, we need to offer them chemo immuno combination of atezolizumab based on the IM Passion study. Along with that, we also can look into the androgen receptors which are present, and we can target them accordingly. And the data are still premature to use. And then we have some antibody drug conjugates like Sacituzumab govitecan has shown some benefit and has been approved as of now to use, and availability is an issue as of now. So triple negative breast cancer is not just chemo as of now. We're looking into things beyond chemotherapy with immunotherapy, PARP inhibitors, and antibody drug conjugates, and androgen receptor blockers, and now PICLICA inhibitors. So this is how we are developing as far as treatment of triple negative breast cancer is concerned. Okay, thank you. Over to you, organizers. If there are any questions, we can take it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrakant sir, for taking everyone through this very comprehensive presentation of what the current standards for management of triple negative are, as well as the newer molecules on it. You clearly said, sir, that it's not just restricted to chemotherapy now, but there's also the importance of androgen receptor positivity, which can also serve as some kind of a target. So, thank you so much, sir, for taking us through such in-depth discussion on this. I invite the audience who's been attending the session to either ask their questions in the chat box, or if they feel they can also unmute their lines and ask the questions to directly. So some of the questions we are getting, sir, are sir, what in your practice is the first line of management of triple negative breast cancer, sir? In your practice?
Well, first line, if it's an advanced triple negative breast cancer, always talk to the patient and whether are they affording for immunotherapy. If they're affording for immunotherapy, we need to see the PDL1 status. If the PDL1 is positive by SP142, definitely we offer them the option of nab-paclitaxel plus atezolizumab, because this has shown the highest overall survival benefit in this set of population. So we do offer chemoimmunotherapy in the first line for all patients where there is prospect. If there is no prospect for immunotherapy, then we use single agent chemotherapy with either anthracycline or taxane. Or if the patient is grossly symptomatic or has a lot of disease burden, there we use combination chemotherapy like a taxane platinum or a gemcitabine platinum. So depending on what comorbidities patient has. So the standard of care should be that we should be testing PDL1 for all patients of triple negative breast cancer in the present day. If it is positive, we should be offering them atezolizumab plus nab-paclitaxel based on the IM Passion study. If there is no prospect of immunotherapy, then we should use single agent chemotherapy rather than combination chemotherapy, because combination chemotherapy has not improved overall survival, it has only improved response rates. And regarding which agent to choose depends on how comfortable you are using with, or depends on the comorbidities the patient has. So if a patient has hepatic derangement, then I cannot use anthracycline and taxanes. I would be using more of platinum in this setting. And if it's renal derangement is there, then I will be using taxanes. So it depends on the underlying comorbidities. I will choose the chemotherapy drug. So none of the chemotherapy is superior or inferior to each other. We have to choose them in sequence, one after the other, not exhausting them soon. It is not how intensely we treat, it is how long we treat and keep the patient symptom free and have a easy course of life throughout.
Thank you so much for addressing that. So, sir, as you said, depending upon the PDL1 expression, you would consider if the patient can afford, you would consider taking the patient for an atezolizumab and a NAB taxane combination as per the IMPACT study. Uh, Thank you for sharing that with us, sir. Sir, one of the questions that has come up is when you consider taxanes for the patient, sir. Do you see any difference or in terms of when choosing the taxane, sir, between docetaxel and paclitaxel? And then that, sir, further extends to the use of the nanoparticle formulation.
Yeah, so taxane has been the backbone of chemotherapy in any cancer for that matter. Docetaxel is little difficult to handle drug when compared to paclitaxel in terms of neutropenia and diarrhea is concerned. So we hardly use docetaxel in the metastatic setting because metastatic patients have a performance status that is around not that well, not it is around 1 or 2, and may not tolerate the classical 100 milligram per meter square of docetaxel. So it is a difficult to use drug. A lot of neutropenia with the dose whatever is used. So paclitaxel is a definite alternative, especially weekly paclitaxel in a metastatic breast cancer is really promising. And when you compare and contrast nab-paclitaxel versus paclitaxel, one thing is the hypersensitivity component is not there because it is cremorphin free, and we have data that the response rates are better with nab-pacli when compared to paclitaxel, but the survival is not that significant. So whether this response rate is better, is it due to the actual higher dose of nab-pacli, or is it due to the molecule itself, is a matter of debate. But however, whenever feasible, if the patient can afford, definitely nab-paclitaxel will be an option. And when I am using immunotherapy backbone, where I would avoid using steroids along with this, I would choose nab-pacli over paclitaxel. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Dr. Chandrakant, for addressing the question of the audience so that they may also further be able to guide in terms of which vaccine to choose. Sir, for the biopsy, sir, that is done in patient for breast cancer. Sir, is MSI MMR also included for these patients who may benefit, so that they may benefit from immunotherapy?
Yeah. So MSI, as far as is concerned, definitely we look into MSI for all tumors. It's a tumor agnostic indication, whether I have colon or gallbladder cancer or any cancer for that matter. If MSI high, immunotherapy works to whatever extent, whatever data we have. Definitely we can do MSI. It's another surrogate marker that immunotherapy is going to work. When we have exhausted all lines of therapy, we do PDL1 expression on a routine basis. MSI we do when we have exhausted all other standard options. And if MSI is high, provided we have exhausted standard options.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chandrakant, for addressing that. Dr. Chandrakant,
Couple of patients.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. I think we lost your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're able to hear?
Yes, sir. We're back.
Yeah, so I was just making a point that MSI is a tumor agnostic indication. Whichever tumor where we have exhausted standard treatment options and we have MSI high, definitely immunotherapy can be given. And in the first line, we do PDL1 in breast cancer. We are reserving MSI testing in breast cancer for subsequent lines where we have exhausted all treatment options.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrakant, for addressing that. Dr. Chandrakant, can you also shed some light on the androgen receptor positivity and TNBC, sir?
Yeah, so as I was saying you, as far as the molecular classification of triple negative breast cancer is concerned, 70 to 75% of them are basal like where chemotherapy and immunotherapy works. We have another 5 to 10% which are luminal androgen receptor positive subgroup. We have a small set of triple negatives which do have significant androgen receptor expression. And now we have modalities where we can quantify the amount of androgen receptor expression, whether it is 0, 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus. So if you have a higher androgen receptor positivity, we used to use drugs like bicalutamide, where we hardly saw any responses. There were only anecdotal evidences that these molecules worked. Now that we have enzalutamide, which is a potent anti-androgen, it inhibits right from the receptor level in the intracellular level and also its translocation. Enzalutamide has shown benefit. So definitely we need to look into the quantification of androgen receptor expression on the triple negative variety, because we have 5 to 10% patients which are of luminal androgen receptor expressing molecular subtype, and which gives good enough PFS in this particular population. This is another target where we can look into. Okay.
Right, Dr. Chandrakant. Thank you for addressing that, sir. Sir, I think we can take one more question and then we can look towards concluding. Sir, in when you talk about immunotherapy, sir, for your patients,
Yeah.
is that how do you choose between the molecules of pembrolizumab and nivolumab, sir, for going ahead for these patients?
Yeah. So, as far as breast cancer is concerned, we are confining ourselves mainly to atezolizumab based on the IM Power 130 data. This PDL1 expression platforms are different for pembrolizumab and atezolizumab. I would be using SP142 for atezolizumab on the immune cells, whereas the tumor proportion score or the tumor cell PDL1 expression will reflect the sensitivity to pembrolizumab, whereas nivolumab has got another different way of testing, or it can be used in lung, for example, without PDL1 positivity. So as far as triple negative breast cancer is concerned, atezolizumab has come up in a big way because of the successful randomized trial, whereas pembrolizumab we do use on selected patients where we have PDL1 positivity by the different platform. So the platform in which we do PDL1 testing matters before we choose that particular immunotherapy drug, because the trial has shown that statistically significant results only when you have selected patients depending on that particular platform. So exchanging platforms is not a big idea as far as immunotherapy is concerned.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrakant, for addressing that question and the others which had come up. Sir, I thank you so much for taking the entire attending audience through this very crucial topic of triple negative breast cancer. You very eloquently taken everyone through the studies that are there for not just contemporary management, but also an outlook of what is out there in the future. And through your clinical experience, have shared with us some important points to consider when managing these patients. With that, sir, I thank you very much for taking out your precious time this evening, and I also thank everyone who's taken out their time to come together and make this a very fruitful session with fruitful discussion. With that, sir, I thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good evening. Good
Thank
night.
you so much.